guys, welcome back. It's Stuart from the Film Reelcast. This week we're going to look at episode 4 of The Shield, season 1, which is called The Spread. But before we start talking about episode 4, let's have a quick recap on what happened throughout episode 1, 2 and 3. The main crux being that Vic is responsible for the death of Terry Crowley, who was a part of the strike team assigned by David Acevedo, the captain. And the main reason being to take down Vic Mackey, working behind Vic's back to build a case for the Justice Department to take Vic down. And the only person who's aware of the death when it actually happened, the murder, shall we say, is Shane Van Drell. And as we've seen through episode 1 to 3, that Shane isn't dealing with the death very well, and he's got a conscience. He's seen as the weak link by Captain Acevedo, and throughout time Shane will be the person that the captain targets because he's got a conscience, because he's weak, because he's not intelligent, all of that. You pick one or pick all three, that he's the one who's going to be targeted to try and bring Vic down because he sees Shane as weak. So we see the start of episode 4, as I say, it's called The Spread, where Acevedo's handing out warrants to all the uniformed and all the detectives as well, to go around, and anyone who's got an outstanding warrant to go around their address and just arrest them, bring them in, clear out the warrants so they can start fresh. Vic sees Danny with a warrant, and the guy on there is called Virgil, and it turns out that Virgil tried to take a swing at him in front of his own children, so Vic wants to go around there and arrest him so he can get a bit of payback. And before he does that, brought to his attention is that someone's come in and asking for Vic. And we realise it's Connie. And if you remember, Connie is the prostitute who features throughout this. And she's the prostitute who Vic's got a real soft spot for. We learnt that she's got a son that she's struggling to take care of. She's a heroin addict. She smoked crack. She's on the game. She's very, very vulnerable. And she's putting her kid at risk as well. And I think that's Vic's main focus, to try and help her to help her son. So she turns up and she's got a big cut on her shoulder, and she says that one of the clients done it. He tried to rape her. She kicked and she managed to escape, but she's got quite a bad injury. So amazingly, Vic's got to go out and do his warrant. So what he asked Dutch to go and arrest the guy, look into it, take care of Connie, take her to the hospital. And it's interesting because so far he's belittled Dutch, but he's asked Dutch to go and take care of her, take her to the hospital and investigate it. So it's a sign that, despite belittling him, that he actually does possibly respect Dutch as a very good detective, and that if he had to get a job done and someone to investigate something, that he'd look at Dutch to do it. So Dutch and Wims take on the investigation of finding Connie's rapist. So the team execute the warrant on Virgil's address, and they take down everyone who's inside, and whilst they're there, walking through the bathroom door, unbeknown to what's going on, is Derrick Tripp. And it turns out that Tripp is a famous basketball player for New Jersey, and he's in town in Los Angeles to play the LA Lakers. They toss everyone else out of the room, but keep hold of Derrick Tripp. And it's interesting because Vic, obviously Tripp is a massive player, and they even say that Tripp turns everyone inside out, and he'll be the downfall of the LA Lakers. He's responsible for the possible defeat of the Lakers tonight. So they think if we hold on to Tripp, then New Jersey will lose and the LA Lakers will win. So Shane instantly sees this as a cash cow, and that he gets hold of his bookie. I don't know who everyone's got their own bookie. I certainly haven't got my own one, but he gets hold of his bookie and he puts lots of money down. And he says to Vic, look, this is a way of making so much money. He goes, why don't you put money down? But interestingly, Vic, whose main motivation is money, isn't interested in putting any money down, any bets. He's just interested in seeing the Lakers win, and he's responsible for possibly getting them into the playoffs and changing sports history by keeping Derrick Tripp in the hotel room. So while they keep him there, that they say, or they make believe, that they're going to speak to his captain to try and get the charge of being in possession of a gun rubbed off, because he's got a moral clause in his contract, Tripp has, from his sponsors, and this won't go down well if he's found in possession with a gun, found in an area where there people are smoking drugs and known gang members. And Tripp is saying that even though he's a multi-millionaire, when he plays LA, that he'll like to come and hang with his homies and his friends and stuff like that, and he's still got his roots here. But they try and make this disappear, or so they believe. And in a really funny sequence, that Vic pretends he's talking to the captain in order to make the gun charges go away, and in fact he's talking to Corrine, and he's telling Corrine that he's got an NBA star arrested on gun charges and it's Derrick Tripp, and can you make this go away? She goes along with it, which is absolutely brilliant the way she does, but it highlights how sneaky Vic is. It highlights that Corrine has been subject to his very, very sneaky ways. In the meantime, you see a female turn up at the front counter, and it turns out that it is Derrick Tripp's attorney, and she's just inquiring why the client has been arrested, where he is, what's going to happen. And she speaks to Acevedo, who happens to be at the front counter. And Acevedo has no knowledge whatsoever that Tripp has been arrested. You then go on to see Dutch and Wims, who remember have taken on the investigation given to them by Vic to try and find out who Connie's attacker is. And they're going through some photo fits. They say to Connie, look at these pictures. One of them must be your attacker. And they don't really believe her. You get the impression out of the two of them that Wims really wants to help, but Dutch just looks upon her as a prostitute, and that maybe nothing's worth investigating to you because you are just a prostitute. He looks down on her, he speaks to her, and he belittles her, and that he's not that interested in helping her. But interestingly enough, his attitude changes as the investigation goes on, and it's again what we've spoken about before as an insight into what Dutch actually wants and what his motivations are. So due to the Derrick Tripp incident, Vic feels he needs to find somewhere else to move him. So what he does is he looks for buildings over the road, and there is an apartment for rent. So whilst he goes over there, trouble always seems to follow Vic. He hears screaming and shouting. There's a woman screaming, and when he goes to have a look what's going on, you've got some guy who's clearly off his head on drugs holding a newborn baby off like a second floor balcony, and Vic tries to negotiate with him, but clearly this guy's on drugs. There's no negotiating to be done. And unbelievably, and I was really, really shocked when I saw this, because it looks so realistic the way it's done. Remember the way I said this is filmed, it's all kind of done in one take, really grainy footage like you're actually there, that you see this guy jump off with this baby. Obviously it's not a real baby, but it looks really good. Jumps off the second balcony into this disgusting green pool, holding the baby, and Vic thinks, oh shit. So he has to then jump in. He rescues the baby and obviously arrests the guy, and comes out and gives the guy the baby back to the mum, who's screaming and really emotional. But it's a really unexpected scene, and it's a memorable scene that's really, really good. And again, it shows the good side of Vic. So Connie, through the ID procedure, identifies someone called William Greeley, and she's so sure this is the guy. So what they do is Wims jacks up a warrant, and then you see the kind of SWAT team, the uniform team, go to Greeley's house, and they link up this chain to the door, and they rip the door off the hinges, and they run through into his lounge. And interestingly enough, it turns out that Greeley is there naked, masturbating into a plastic pot, much to his surprise, to his disgust and embarrassment. Then Wims walks through the door, and then the next scene is really, really good. He's got a padlocked fridge, and even the cockiness and arrogance of Dutch shouts out to the uniformed officers, who wants a bet of how many heads are in this fridge. And he's so excited, he thinks he's cracked it big time. So he shouts out for bolt cutters and cuts the bolt off the lock off the fridge. And inside there's about 6 clear containers. And anyone with any common sense would know that the material inside, the liquid inside, is probably semen. And he lifts the container up and smells it and said it isn't mayonnaise. And it's disgusting, the fact that he smells it. And as he's saying it isn't mayonnaise, Greeley shouts out, "Leave my children alone." And that causes Dutch to drop the sample on the floor, which smashes, and the semen goes everywhere. And everyone, again, it's another epic fail on behalf of Dutch in front of everyone, and another reason for other people down the line to take the piss out of him. But they arrest him and they take him back to the police station. And another tangent, remember, a lot of the time through this, you see it from the perspective of the strike team, from the captain, from uniform, from detectives. So they've all got their own individual storylines. Some of them kind of overcross, interlink, and some of them just play out on their own. And this one is that they've arrested a guy that Danny and Julian have called Thomas. And they bring him into custody. And as they're waiting to book him in, Thomas says that, I know you. And I've seen you standing outside one of the clubs in Los Angeles, and you should go in. And Thomas is overtly homosexual. He makes no secret of this, and that he's got an interest in Julian. And Julian is obviously an environment, a very macho environment, a very testosterone-driven environment where people will latch on to any, not a weakness, that's the wrong word, but any angle that they can take the piss or berate someone. So he dismisses it and tells Thomas to shut up. But Thomas keeps on. So he books Thomas in, and he's actually saying that my arrest is a mistake. The fines aren't outstanding, they've been paid. And Danny tells Thomas just to shut up. So Danny gives Julian a bit of feedback that these people we're arresting, you need to remember they'll lie through their front teeth. Even if there's evidence right in front of them with big neon signs around them saying guilty, they actually will continue to deny it. So even though this guy's saying, look, I know you, he's trying to play you, that's what she's saying. Don't listen to what they're saying. So Greeley's interviewed by Wims and Dutch. And Wims just wants to get on with this case. There's an assault and he's been identified. That's all she wants to talk about. But Dutch really believes, he's been looking through some paperwork prior to the interview of prostitutes that have been attacked, prostitutes that have been killed in the area of Farmington, the surrounding areas in Los Angeles. He believes this guy is a huge Ted Bundy style serial killer. And he believes that this is his chance to make a name for himself. That everyone's going to know that he is responsible for catching this. And he's got blinkers on just to find out if he's a serial killer. Regardless of the assault on Connie, he just wants to find out if he's a serial killer. And it's like Dutch is looking for the approval from Wims, as if he's trying to impress Wims all the time, that I know you think I'm a good officer, but I'm much better than that. That if anyone out of all people can catch a serial killer, it's me. And Wims is just never interested. All she wants to do is do the job at hand, which is deal with the perpetrator in front of her and try and get him sentenced if he needs to be sentenced. And if people aren't guilty, she'll quite happily cut them free. She won't try and string them along to try and find offences to put to them. So they're two completely different characters. Sometimes they work well, and sometimes they don't work well. So back in the hotel room, that Tripp is getting a bit restless. He says that surely you must have spoken to the captain by now. Surely I can go. And it turns out that he's got a woman arranged to meet. That every time he's in Los Angeles, and I'm sure every time he goes to San Francisco, or he goes to like Texas or anywhere else, that he's got women lined up being an NBA star. And that I need to meet this woman, she's my LA girl when I come in, and we regularly have sex, so she's a proper groupie. So Lem says, yeah, you can use my phone, we're going to sit here and waste time anyway, so you may as well get up to business. So he calls this girl, and this stunning girl turns up. And again, much to the disgust of Shane, because again, this woman is so fine, completely out of Shane's league. He'd never pull a woman like this. And she walks in and she asks for Tripp, dismisses Shane, and they go into the bedroom. And he just, his eyes are emerald green when Tripp takes his lady into the bedroom. But Ronnie and Ronnie and Lem, who's there, proper excited. They're saying that, man, she's so fine. She's proper 10 out of 10. And they don't care. They're not jealous. They just think it's a buzz of what's actually going on. So Corinne and Matthew come up to the barn because, again, which plays a part in this, they're reminding Vic that you've got a parents' evening tonight and you need to go to the parents' evening. So during the interview, it's clearly not working of Dutch's presence in the room. But what they do is Wims believes she can crack Greeley, and that she flirts with him, which is really interesting because she's quite an alpha character, Wims, and to see her flirt, to act feminine, is quite strange because doesn't really wear makeup. She's not particularly good looking, despite the fact she is amazing at her job, but she flirts with Greeley, and Greeley laps it up, and she's trying to make some kind of connection, and it turns out that Greeley isn't a murderer, that he's got a very fertile semen, and that he wants to spread his semen and impregnate women with his semen because he believes that he'll create amazing babies, perfect babies, and if he carries on doing this and the more people he'll rape and spread his seed and impregnate, that the better the whole of the world will be, because there'll be perfect children because they'll come from his perfect semen. And Wims pretends to go along with this, and that she wouldn't mind that happening to her, and that she finds it hard to get a man, but she'd like children, so he laps it up, and in doing so he confesses to raping 12 prostitutes using his semen, and so they get a case there, and basically he gets charged with all 12 offences. But again, this is to the disgust and annoyance of Dutch, because he's not the serial killer. But that does mean, which you need to remember, that there is a serial killer out there who's killed numerous prostitutes. So going back to Vic and Tripp and the dilemma that he's got. So what they do in the end is that because Tripp's there, and they cannot go along just keeping Tripp prisoner, and Tripp does try to escape, and it kicks off between him and Shane, where they have a fight in the hotel room, and thankfully Vic turns up, and Vic just kicks Shane out. He drives into the middle of Los Angeles and just says, right, just get out of the car. And Tripp says, I can't do that. He goes, I need to be at the basketball game, but he just kicks him out of the car, and it turns out that he just gets surrounded by news reporters and press and fans, and Vic just fucks off and just ignores him. So it ends with they're going to the school, and they've got the parents' evening, and the school teacher says that their son Matthew may have something wrong with him, and that he needs to go and see a paediatrician to find out why his behaviour is so erratic, that he can't communicate with children. He has real problems doing that. And to Vic, he just brushes it off because this is something not in his control, which he doesn't like, so he just brushes it off. And it ends with Julian going to Thomas's house. Remember, Thomas is the guy he arrested previously with the warrants, and says that you accused me of being homosexual before and I'm not. And Thomas is like, okay then, you're not. But then Thomas makes advances on him, and they end up kissing, and Julian goes into the bedroom with him. So Julian is homosexual, and this is something that he's gonna have to fight to hide, mainly because of the way he'll be treated by other officers who clearly won't understand that everyone's different, but because, as we've seen before, that Julian is so religious that this goes against his religious beliefs himself, and this plays a real part into it. So that was episode 4, called The Spread. And for a change, there was no mention or no storyline of Terry Crowley whatsoever. And it's just a good old-fashioned episode with the team getting up to no good. Dutch and Wims just doing investigations. Acevedo, for once, isn't on Vic's case to try and accuse him of anything. So it's more of a filler. But next one is really, really good. I can promise you that. So if you enjoy this, please subscribe. We've got episode 1, 2 and 3. Go back and find those and have a look at those. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment and go on our Twitter channel and subscribe. We've got our weekly podcast. We're on Facebook, the Film Reel Podcast, and you can subscribe to our weekly podcast there. As I say, we've got over 100 of them, and usually it's me and James who are doing those. So the next one we're doing is Equalizer, as I say. So go on there, have a look, subscribe. We're on iTunes as well as Android platforms. But this is The Shield. I'm Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this.